right, we want to take a moment to talk about Death Wish Coffee. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, do yourself a favor and get over to deathwishcoffee.com. And there you can buy the strongest coffee known to man without a prescription.
The world's strongest coffee ever.
Yes, as proudly displayed on my wife's sweatshirt over there.
Yes, on my body,
Yes.
on my mug,
Yes,
on
it's
my
on my mug.
K-cups. Not...
Yes, and you'll know them by their telling sign of the skull and crossbones.
It's
that tells
so
you
good.
exactly what you're in for. It's that used to be the international symbol for poison, but now it is the symbol for good damn coffee.
It's awesome. Without milk, with milk, you don't really need it because it's strong.
But
it's
not bitter.
Not bitter. So you don't even need milk. You don't even need sugar, but you can add it if you'd like. It's just really, really the perfect, strongest, most awesome coffee.
Become a junkie of Death Wish, just like the Anderson Council. And
we got them hooked.
again, deathwishcoffee.com. Thank you very much.
Enjoy it.
Hey everybody, it's Scott Holden here. Got a little different intro for you this week. I just want to take a moment before the show starts to thank you, our listeners out there, for sticking with us for 2 years or for however long since you jumped on. We wouldn't be able to do any of this without you at our backs, really. So thank you. Without you guys, I mean, I don't know where we'd be. And you guys have really made this experience so much, more fun. And just, you've been the driving force. What you're hearing tonight or today, whenever you're listening, is not a typical show. We mixed it up a little bit for today. So for all the regular listeners, I apologize if you're about to hear stories that you've heard before. I hope that maybe you'll glean some new aspects of same old tales. If you're newer to the show, then this is not at all a bad place to start because it's kind of a little retrospective as we're guided through some of our experiences by a good friend of the show, Dr. Squee, who hosts his own podcast called Galifrey Stands, who started his show around the same time and has grown into such a wonderful podcaster. Well, you'll see. Just listen to this episode and see what happens by the end. Until next time, enjoy. I hope you enjoy this show. Again, thank you so much for listening. Again, bear with the change in format, and if this is repetitious and self-indulgent, the way we are about that, we promise next week to get back to new stuff. We're going to actually get back on video again. So our first show of season 3, we promise, will be video. And, we want to get back on form again. So we hope you enjoy this birthday celebration of 2 years, our SManniversary show, if you will, second SManniversary. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here this evening to act as the announcer for this special celebration. Tonight, we celebrate 2 years of ThatMan on Fatman. Oh, what lovely dancing girls we have here, yes. I love it. It's beautiful, wonderful. And it is my special honor this evening to welcome and introduce the special guest host for tonight. That's right, we have a special guest host in the house. And that special guest host is none other than... Oh shit, I missed my cue. Wait, I think I could try and stick a landing on this thing. Let me see. Well, that's very good guitar. Thank you for the fill. Yes, we're doing a call and response here. I can feel it in my veins, Mr. Sharper. Yes, I can. You're the bigot. Yes. Anyway, as I said, here's our special guest host for tonight, Dr. Squee. Yes, welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of That Man on Fatman. Thank you very much to Mr. Bain for that intro. And my name is Dr. Squee, and with me as always is my producer and co-host extraordinaire, Dottie Who. And you may be wondering what we're doing flying this puppy tonight. I'm sorry, but you'll have to put up with me because I am here to introduce and to interview your host for the last 2 years. First of all, we've got the host of That Man and Fatman, Mr. Scott Holden. And with him, of course, his wife and co-host and producer extraordinaire, Gene Holden. Welcome to your show, guys.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, congratulations on 2 fantastic years.
Wait, first I have to say, I cracked up when you thanked Bane, so. I can't believe it's been 2 years.
I know, right?
It's incredible.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
is that we've lasted this long.
Yes.
No, not in that way. It seems like yesterday that you were starting was all I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Sorry.
Well,
don't-
let's kick it off going way back. And let's look into how you started off, Scott. So tell us a bit about where you kind of are coming from and your family growing up and a bit of that kind of good backstory.
Oh my God, my family growing up.
Wow.
We're going places tonight.
Wow, we are. Okay, my family of origin. I'm adopted, actually. So, but I've always known I was adopted. It wasn't like kept a secret. So, always kind of knew that. My childhood was pretty much normal suburban kid. Spent my first formative years in a place called Middle Village, Queens, and then we eventually we moved to Orlando for a couple years. So that was interesting as a kid moving to the Disney World for a few years during what was called the AT&T divestiture.
You knew that when you were that age?
I remember hearing that, yeah. Huh. Because you kind of knew, well, why were we moving? Well, we're moving because there's this big lawsuit.
Yeah.
In which the bells are, being challenged. So we were New York Telephone. So we were explaining this. So we were moving down south to AT&T. We were supposed to be there for 5 years.
That's good, though, because they let you.
But the lawsuit was settled in 2. So we were, at that point, I guess my father had, was either go back to New York or you don't have a job. So.
Oh, so once the lawsuit was done, you had to move.
Yeah, he was New York Tel. So we went back. But when we went back, we didn't go back to Queens. We went to Jersey, which is where I spent most of the rest of.
Yeah, that's where we are now.
So, what about you, Gene?
My
childhood.
My childhood.
Yeah.
Okay, from the Bronx, we moved to New Jersey.
You don't have any memories of the Bronx, though, do you?
No, I mean, I have some. We have some great pictures of that time, but no, I don't have.
So were you Gene from the block back then?
I was from the block, Jeannie from the block. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was only on the block for about a year, so it wasn't really very eventful. Then we went to the suburbs, and then that's pretty much where I stayed. Suburb to another. Yeah.
And Chatham is a very
Catholic school.
affluent community.
Yeah, but you know what? It didn't seem like that.
I know.
It
Just
doesn't
like
seem
Randolph
like that
didn't
when
seem
you're
like it.
young.
I know,
Yeah, when you're young. But I went to Catholic school, and I went to, but then went to a regular high school. So
I did a little Catholic school as well, up until, let's see, I'd say 5th grade, I think I did.
yeah.
And most of the time the rationale was the schools were better.
Well, and that was in Queens, right? That was in
for Queens and
Yeah.
Florida, because Florida
That's sweet.
schools are notoriously terrible.
Yeah. So I'm the oldest, and I have 3 sisters, and they're all wonderful.
I was going to say, we should probably take this moment to introduce the new member of the show. Now, what was going on was...
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. We were constantly having trouble with... We would forget things. We'd be mid-sentence and forget the name of an actor or something. So we knew we needed someone to be like a factotum. So I found a person who fit the bill perfectly. Now, I will have her introduce herself by saying, Alexa, what's a podcast?
A podcast is a form of digital media that consists of an episodic series of audio, video, digital radio, PDF, or EPUB files subscribed to and downloaded through web syndication or streamed online to a computer or mobile device.
Alexa, who is Kevin Smith?
Kevin Patrick Smith is an American filmmaker, actor, comedian, and public speaker, as well as a comic book writer, author, and podcaster.
Am I getting upstaged in my hosting duties here?
I feel
by
like
Siri
that too.
effectively here?
It's not Siri. Alexa,
Yeah.
what's the difference between you and Siri?
Siri's a great app, but I'm different.
Alexa, how are you different than Siri?
I'm more of a homebody.
She's better than Siri.
All right. She actually does. She's smarter. She does give me answers, unlike Siri. Siri's never given me a right answer.
Yeah,
And was she saying that she's got a nice body?
she does have a nice body. She
She
has really
said
big.
she's more of a homebody.
She has really big boobs too.
Yes. So yeah, I saw an opportunity to utilize technology in the show. So the next time we get stumped, we can quickly ask Alexa.
She has no problem saying that she doesn't know. So.
Yes. Yes. So that's why they made her a woman, I think.
I was going to say, before we get into the podcasting of it all, I thought we'd also hear, now we've got you guys through your childhood into New Jersey. How did you two meet?
Oh wow, this is a pretty good story.
Okay, you can go into that story.
It's pretty simple, actually.
Yeah.
It's nothing.
It's pretty much the same story. It might be a little. There was a lot of kissing going on.
Yeah, I mean, we were young. What, like 19 and 20 or something?
Yeah.
I was 20. You were 19, I think. Both shouldn't have been drinking.
That was 27 years ago.
I know. Both of us shouldn't be drinking.
We should not have been drinking.
We were at a party
Yeah.
at Morristown. I had just gotten off working. I had been working at a health food store, so I was like, Mr.
Were you working with those clothes on that you had on?
Probably.
Wow, you work like that?
What? Was my ass hanging out of my
No,
shorts? Or
your
whatever?
balls.
My balls hanging out of my shorts.
His balls were like hanging out of his shorts.
right,
He had shorty shorts on, and they were like balls were hanging out.
So your balls were hanging out, you just got off, and then you two met. What?
No. We met after his balls were hanging out.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, go ahead.
So there's this party that our friend threw, and it was in town.
I think his
and-
friend was a little fond of me, too.
Yeah, he apparently had a past of hitting on you.
He did.
So that's why you were invited, obviously.
Yeah, I didn't know that you were the god of my existence was going to walk in.
Oh, yes, of course. The god of your existence. Who walked in. This is what I remember doing. I remember because I was late because I had to work late. I remember, I played catch up. So I literally went to the kitchen and shotgunned a beer.
Yeah.
Like the old fashioned, put a hole in it and
Right.
open the other side, let it go down your throat like
I
a
don't
gun.
get that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was young, stupid. So, but I do remember seeing you. You were sitting on like a love seat or couch. You were in between, I think, there was a guy and a girl, and I just assumed that you were with the guy because maybe he was in the middle, or I don't remember.
But it seemed like that.
Yeah, but I also remember you had this scoop top on.
Yeah.
Which essentially showed off a lot of your
nothing.
your non-existent boobs.
She's mine.
Well, these
that
are kind
girl.
of charming chat-up lines you used at the time, Scott.
I don't even remember. I forget what it was that broke the ice because I did think she was with the guy. So, weren't you with Jennifer and Nick too? Were they there?
No,
as well?
I don't think they were there. I don't remember who I was with. No, I
I
wasn't
think
with
they
anybody.
were. No, okay, well, that's all right. So anyway, yeah, then I just remember eventually we ended up making out on the top of a car
On top of my car. And then he asked me where I lived. I said, I don't know.
because she was moving.
Because we were
that
moving.
day.
And then he said,
And
what's
to me,
your phone
it really
number?
sounded like a blow off.
And then he said, what's your phone number? I said, I don't know.
But she was
I
making
didn't
out
know
with me on
anything.
top of a car. So.
But we did make out. That was fun.
Yes.
And I one of the things I remember is like his hair. He had blonde hair, but it was long, like halfway down his back and straight. And all I remember thinking is, oh my God, like this guy has nicer hair than I do. This is not right. He's got more beautiful hair than me.
I had long, luxurious
really did.
blonde hair.
But your shorts were way too short.
And I was
They
some
were
sort
way
of,
too
I don't
short.
even know what I was, some sort of like hipster,
You're trying to be some like
hippie
go-go
punk dude.
So like all you needed was like go-go boots or something. I don't know what.
I don't know what it was.
Between the hair and the short shorts, I'm just picturing a 70s or 80s tennis player.
Nah, because they were cut off jeans.
They were like cut off jeans, yeah. But he could have.
I was
done
very like
that.
hippy dippy punk thing. I don't know what I was.
Yeah, I think he was trying to come up with his own style.
Yes, pretty much. It was
Yeah.
it was alternative.
Yeah. And when he arrived there, and it wasn't even like a quiet thing. He had like people all around him. It was like some like, like paparazzi thing. I don't know what was going on.
The life of the party. Well, I was a rock and roller, Gene. People knew me.
He was a rock and roller. Yeah. So we met at a party, and he proceeded to take me out on our first date after that and got me totally drunk. And
Yeah.
that's all she wrote.
Melon balls, baby.
Melon balls. We went to the speakeasy
Yes.
in the city.
I
So,
wonder
yeah,
if I think it's still there.
And then we stayed at his friend's house in the Bronx or something.
Yeah. No, it was in Spanish Harlem.
Spanish Harlem.
And like you called your dad, and he was in a total panic.
Yeah.
You're like,
Dad,
you're on this date with this guy first time, and we're down in Spanish Harlem. You're sleeping over.
Dad, I'm going to stay overnight. We're in Spanish Harlem.
That was Josh. Shout out to Josh Yarrington.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh, we're still together after all
That's
these
kinda-
years. Thanks
that's
for
kinda-
providing us your apartment.
Yeah. That's kind of like you don't want to get that call from your daughter saying that you're staying overnight in Spanish Harlem.
Well, I just remember what was funny was I messed up somehow, and I think we got off at the wrong block. Either we took the bus or whatever the fuck we did. And I just remember like walking 10 blocks through, a very,
God.
at that time was what would be a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
So much so that I clearly remember a bunch of guys kind of following us going, white people.
Oh, my God. I don't even remember that.
Yes. Because, but as Josh would say, who lived there, he's like, once you live there, it's fine. Like, they get used to seeing you. You're in the neighborhood.
you're
and
like
you're
white people.
You're a feature.
Yeah. You're a feature.
You just become part of the. So like them being there was no problem, but us getting there, unless you got dropped off right in front, whoa,
Yeah.
it was rough, and we did that fuck up. So
And they may have been saying that to kind of intimidate us, maybe a little bit.
this was the love of her life. She just found.
I know, and it's Valentine's Day, so it's very appropriate.
Yeah. Hey, how about that?
But I am
we're getting romantic here on that man.
I am smiling though, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
I do remember it smiling because it was a sweet and innocent time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And then
And then we dropped acid a couple times later, and oh my God, we've never talked about this.
Or, no, actually, I guess that would be the second official date.
But the thing about that is, and he hasn't even asked us about our second official date.
No, because think about it. Because when we met, that wasn't a date. We just met.
Yeah, that was
So what was our first date was the speakeasy experience, and then
the second
then
one.
go
We
up
weren't
to
even
Spanish
together, though, were we? Didn't we?
and then the third, this would be the second date, which was
The 4th of July.
the 4th of July.
But didn't we?
Of what would that be? 90?
Yeah.
Was it 90? Yeah, 4th of July of 90.
Right. Now, but didn't
Frightening,
we,
right, people?
did-
You're like, I wasn't even born. There's
Didn't-
listeners out there who wasn't born.
But wasn't
I was
there?
worried it was in the 40s when you were talking about going to a speakeasy.
Well, that place actually
How old are you
was.
guys?
That place was, as a matter of fact, a holdover. That's why its name is that. It's an old 30s speakeasy holdover.
But you knew how to treat a girl back then.
If you like to drink.
Back then.
If you
back
like
then.
if you like to drink, I was pretty much as like Tim Duffy said. Back then you got primed for everything.
It's true though, and I don't drink today.
Yeah, neither do I. Thankfully.
So yeah, so now it's just like
Been,
hanging
what,
out.
21 years or
We
something.
don't need. Yeah, we just have fun no matter what. We don't need alcohol.
God, that sounds so lame.
And is that a judgment because I'm English? We need alcohol.
No, not at all.
Absolutely not.
Believe me. I mean, I think everyone who's sort of allergic to alcohol, there's part of them that wishes they could.
Yeah.
But the problem is, once you try, I mean, if you think, oh, wait, I think I got this licked, that's the problem. You know what I mean? Like, you're about to consume the thing you're allergic to again, expecting a different result.
Right. Well, and I think it's good, like that, like you and I are together in that respect, because we can be like, hey, that's probably not a good idea, because you get like that when you do that.
Yeah, it's the old analogy of, if you're allergic to strawberries, if you eat them, you're going to break out.
Right. But there's always somebody that says, well, maybe if you drank that.
Or, no, maybe if you soak your strawberries in chocolate. Something like that, you'll be like, oh, yeah. And then you eat the fucking... But what you forget is that your body knows. It's going to break that shit down. It's going to say, there's a fucking strawberry in here, motherfucker.
Eventually it'll figure it out.
So for us, it's the same thing. It's just alcohol is the thing that does that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I thought we could get on to the proto... well, not proto ThatMan, but how ThatMan was predecessed, and that's BCJ, Bone Crushing Juggernaut. So maybe you could talk us a bit through that and how that got to the point of ThatMan being born.
Sure. We had moved to Virginia. I had a great job. I was a corporate dude in IT, moving up the ranks. I was a technical project manager, blah, blah, blah. Making a fair amount, a decent wage, and, having a good life. It seemed like everything happened at once. I got laid off in Virginia after maybe 11 years with the company. And then we realized we were upside down in our house. And, one thing after another. Bad chain of events. And so we tried to make a go of it in Virginia. We couldn't. We ended up coming back home. And I was fucking depressed and distraught. And, I couldn't get hired. I couldn't get arrested there. Eventually, we had to move home, and I just, after a few months, I was in a car accident, and then that kind of shook me out of something. I don't know. I was very depressed, and I guess it made me realize that I should take action in my life. And then I read Kevin Smith's book. I listened to it, actually, on audio. And I don't know what happened, but there was one paragraph or chapter part where he talks about, essentially, don't wait for someone else to do something for you.
There's a trick to being whatever you want to be in life. It starts with the simple belief that you are what or who you say you are. It starts, like all faiths, with a belief predicated more on whimsy than reality. And you gotta believe for everybody else, too, until you can show them proof. If you're lucky, someone starts believing with you, first theoretically, then in practice. And two people believing are the start of a congregation, my friend. You build a congregation of believers and eventually set out to craft a cathedral. Sometimes it's just a church, sometimes it turns out to be a chapel. Folks who don't build churches will try to tell you how you're doing it wrong, even as your steeple breaks the clouds. Never listen. But before all of that, you gotta start with the idea. And I don't mean the idea for the story, movie, novel, installation, song, podcast, whatever. You got to start with the idea that you can do this. Something that's not normally done by everybody else. Since it's not second nature to take leaps of faith, you have to motivate yourself. You got to embrace a reasonable amount of unreasonability. Because what you're saying is, I'm going to try this thing that very few people attempt, let alone succeed in doing. But nobody else could believe in you if you don't believe in what you're doing. I've willed almost all the stuff I've done into existence. And if I can do that, anybody can do that. So start your chatter, man. Talk about what you're going to do. Plant the seeds early and take as much time as it requires to will your goals into existence. Don't wait for God or Zeus to move you around the chessboard. God is busy and Zeus is doing movies now, so take control of the game yourself, man. Expect moments of discouragement. Just don't wallow in them. When shit gets tough, and it will, simply tell yourself, if an asshat like Fat Kev Smith can succeed, then what the fuck is stopping me from doing the same? The only guy I ever heard of who got an amazing life literally handed to him was Hal Jordan. Don't wait for a dying alien to give you a magic ring. Just do it yourself, Slappy. We can't all be Superman, but we sure as shit can train hard, and with loads of practice, we can be Batman. And who the fuck doesn't want to be Batman? Batman has an impeccable moral compass. He's clever, he's mysterious, and when fucktards get sassy, he punches them in the face.
And most importantly, what he told me was, just go on the internet and talk with your friends. Because I knew about podcasting, and I knew about, that thing, but I never had the ingredient of what am I supposed to do with this information? How can I employ podcasting in my life? And so when he said just go and talk on the internet with your friends, it gave me permission to just be silly and let it go, and whatever happened, happened. And so I turned to a friend. Since we had just moved back, I knew a guy who had been, I'd been friends with before I met Gene. And I said, do you want to start? I want to do podcasting. And he was a video gamer. He's, for the most part, single. So he was available. And while he didn't, I like to put it this way, he didn't necessarily believe in me. He was willing to help. So that was enough. And so we started a show called Bone Crushing Juggernaut. What was your impressions of Bone Crushing Juggernaut while it was going on from the sidelines? What about what I just said to you? I think I want to start a podcast. Essentially, I needed to spend a little money to get maybe I had some, but did you think I was crazy?
No, because you know what? When you come from being so depressed and kind of like, what do I do now? The fact that you were positive and...
So you were just like, thank God he's got something.
I was just happy that you were happy.
He's not on death's door
And I mean,
anymore.
I'm like simple like that. If you're happy, I'm happy. If you're not hurting yourself and you're happy, I'm happy. So if this is the thing that's going to make you happy, I'm on board.
Doing Bone Crushing Juggernaut with Joey, it felt fun. And within a few months, we had birthed a show that we felt like, oh my God, this is fun. This is funny. I think we have something here. And that's when I reached out to Steve Stark via Twitter saying, hey, we've got this bit we think will be, could be animated. Do you know any? I just assumed he was too busy and asked if he knew anybody. And so he sent out the tweet saying, hey, anybody out there? This guy, has some work. Anybody got anything? And we hooked up with Mark Live, and he did this really cool animation. And that's how we met Mark. Yeah, as this was going along, I kept talking about Kevin a lot because that was, he was my hero, and he's kind of put me on, got me going, got the show going. And around that time, Edumacation started up too, which is with Andy McElfresh on the Smodcast Network. And it was Kevin's first show where there really was direct audience participation, in that Andy was actually soliciting the audience for questions and stuff, and was essentially shouting out people on Twitter for information.
Yeah, he's very connected in from an early time.
Yeah. And that was Kevin's first show that really did that. Because prior to that, most of them were very closed. Yeah, you could tweet and everything, and maybe they would reference them, but they weren't so direct. So Andrew brought that part in. And so right from the start, I love science. I was in. So from the @BC Juggernaut account, I would start tweeting a lot. And because it was a new show, or for whatever reason, and because I'm not a douche, I don't do hater stuff, and, I'm pretty much, I try to be a booster. So my tweets were good, and good enough for those guys to start reading and giving us love. And that, my self-esteem from just those simple things was like, wow. I'm like, it was weird. It felt like you cracked the universe somehow, or like you kind of pushed the universe a little bit and moved it. And that was amazing to me. It was like, if I can do this, I can do anything. It sounds stupid, but it was that simple. The only thing that was going on in the meantime was no one else around me, other than Jean, but she doesn't count because she's my wife, and she was just happy to see it, believed in any of it. They all just thought I was a nut. And so, anyway, I was doing that, and then even Joey was getting frustrated with me with all the Kev content. And so I decided, came to me in a flash.
And that's where I can come in, because I really did.
Yeah,
that happened in a flash like that. In a flash, literally.
I said...
He said,
Gene, I think I want to do a show, and I think I want to call it ThatMan on Fatman.
And that's all. That's exactly how it happened. It was so fucked up. And I was like, okay, that sounds great.
And then I registered the Twitter account, but I sat on it still. And then I was talking to Neil G.
Yes.
A very good guy. He was in...
Was he in Australia?
I think he was an Australian who was at that time living in New Zealand.
Yes.
Or maybe it was the other way around. I've forgotten now. But whatever way, the time worked better. I know that. Right. Timing worked better because he would be up when, we would have this crossover in the morning.
Yeah.
And it would just work out so that we could interact more. And he was unemployed and I was unemployed.
Right.
And he was, so he was sort of like a cheerleader for me. And he cheerleaded the idea. Like when I talked to you, and obviously you're going to do it because you're my wife. But he was like, yeah, and he kind of helped me shape some of the ideas.
Right. I'm sure some wives would have rolled their eyes and said, yeah, whatever.
As did Chundertunes Mark Live.
Yes.
That's where he comes back into the story. And so they became my little council, and eventually I built up the confidence to go out there and do it. And the first show is very much a desperate claim of the space, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it's
Can I just ask Gene? I was just going to ask there. So when he started it, did you think this was going to be something which was going to last this long, or did you think he'd do it for a while and we'd see how it goes? What were your feelings about that?
I know with him, like once he puts his mind to something, it's pretty certain that he's going to follow through. And I knew just from his enthusiasm, just that he was just going to go for it. So I wasn't really thinking too far ahead because I try not to do that anyway in life. I try to kind of just do what's in front of me. I mean, I worry about things, but
boy, does she.
I'm a worrier. I mean, that's just how I'm wired, but. I have to consciously bring it back and just say, okay, this is happening now, and he's going to do it, and we can do it together. And it's when you see someone that's has a fire like that, you have to just kind of let them do it and just be on the side cheering them on. So I kind of knew, I didn't know what it would become, but I just knew it was going to become what he wanted it to become, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And it seems like you kind of started as a presence, certainly on the mic from the beginning, but you're kind of part really built in the show.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I've kind of grown a little bit, I think.
You started out as just sort of actually.
No, I started out in the background. I really
Occasionally you chime in. And but really, there was one episode, I think, where someone canceled, where I lost a guest.
Oh, then you had to have me on.
Then you were a guest. And somewhere in there, I mean, it all kind of sort of happened at once, and that's also where I realized that if I need to cancel a guest, it's hard to be the hatchet man and the host. I mean, it's really because you need a buffer level. You really do, because ultimately, you don't want your first interaction with your guest to be a cancellation if you should have to. So you want, very sensibly, you want someone in between.
Yeah, well, you didn't want to be the person to have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds gutless, but then there's all these other benefits, like, oh, wow, like if a producer can produce and do stuff. So then you kind of start taking on that role.
Right.
And the rest is history. Well, then you came in and you started being sidekick. Well, you were a producer. You're sort of my audience to talk to.
Right.
And
kind of like a co-host sometimes.
Yeah. That's even how it started, because there were many episodes where you were just there. I don't even know if you said anything.
Well, I mean, there's times that I don't, and that's what I'm. That's what I was saying. I don't really always have to chime in. Or I just roll my eyes over here.
Funny,
that you can't see it.
Pam said that.
What?
Pam said she listened to the show and that you were essentially like the Robin Quivers.
My stepmom said I was like Robin Quivers.
Do you find that reductive?
Which is kind of a compliment.
Yeah.
I like Robin.
It reminded me a lot of the origins of Tell 'em Steve Day. They started as a duo with kind of Quinn there doing the sound, and very quickly he became part of the team. Now, if you listen to the early ones, it's kind of weird to have him not being really as present on the mic.
Right.
And I think really that showed on your show. I think it really kind of took off and became kind of more of the show we know now when it was the two of you.
Yes. Do you like how the last few have all been named after Brian Quinn?
Oh, it's genius. I love it. Yeah.
It is very funny.
Yeah,
I have a feeling they're going to do that.
awesome
They're going to
stuff.
keep doing it.
Well, yeah. So now we're in a world where you've started up the podcast, and you told us a little bit there about the first show. But yeah, tell us a bit more about kind of preparing for that first show, and also the theme music, which tells the story of that man.
Yeah, I mean that was. Oh, I love the theme. In that it was so organic, and it was. Well, I need a theme, and everything. I'm not going to lie. The show was. There was a couple things going on. There was a few elements that I loved right from the get-go. One, it was about something I loved, so I could talk about it unapologetically, and I didn't have to worry about Joey flying off the coop. And so I wanted all those elements. I wanted it, like Kevin said with Fatman on Batman. I wanted the element of the Gilligan's Island theme. You know what I mean? It tells the story right up front. You know what you're getting into. And so there's a lot less of explaining and rigmarole to a new listener. It's right there in the cartoon setup. I need a song that sounds like Kevin's song. So Kevin did an episode that I loved called, oh shit, I don't remember the episode title, but they talked about country talking songs.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, they got, the ghost train one, or the ghost trucker.
Yeah.
Phantom 359.
Oh, yes. Oh, my God.
Well, wasn't he talking about like his dad would listen to it?
Yeah, but so, yeah, they got off and during the thing, Kevin does one of his discoveries that he does. He's like, we could become millionaires from the talking song. I mean, because you don't need much talent. You just have to talk over country music. So then, as it turns out, what he did was he turned to someone that we now know, David Mannheimer, and said, hey, I need a bit of country music, and it's got to sound like The Bird. Apparently I didn't know this, but that's the song that we were parroting. So I stepped to my brother, who I hadn't mentioned before, but I was raised with a brother, and he plays guitar. He's a couple years older than me. And I said, hey, Steve, I have this bit of music. It's got to sound like this, and I played him Fatman on Batman, but I want to make it picky and open and clean. And so he came up with the riff, and we recorded it, and then I kind of mashed my words into that, and there you go. We had the theme. Only to find out later that it was David Mannheimer's theme. So I ripped off a guy who ripped off a guy who ripped off a guy.
It works perfectly at the top of the show. It's I think it was when you had Will Wilkins from Netheads on, and he was going, I love it. It just tells you exactly what the show is.
There's a mistake in there. I don't remember the original line, but there's a mistake. And I did the Kevin approach, I was just like, good enough. This take is good enough. And there you go.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to borrow a note from Kev's kind of playbook here and say, now we've established all that, we're just about ready to get the show started here.
I know. And we're like 20 minutes, a half hour in or something.
And one of the ways which you usually start your show, I believe, is with the Smedlines with Mr. Ben Gumry, all the way from Wales. And here he is with this week's Smedlines.
Hello, this is Ben from the blog Indie Mac User, and before I get into this week's Smedlines, I'd like to congratulate Scott and Jean on reaching 2 years with the That Man on ThatMan podcast. Wow, has it really been that long? And now it's time for the Smedlines. And this is the Smedlines for the 16th of February 2016. Sunday saw the return of Season 5 of Comic Book Man, Kevin Smith's TV show on AMC, following The Walking Dead. And this week's episode featured a special guest, comic legend himself, Stan Lee. As if that wasn't enough, Kevin Smith also announced this week that he will be hosting, later in the year, his very own talk show, co-hosted with Greg Grunberg on AMC, following Fear the Walking Dead. This comes following an announcement recently that he will be also directing an episode of The Flash, and also that he had created his own TV pilot, Hollyweed. This clearly establishes Kevin as a player in the TV market. That's the Smedlines for this week. You can share your comments and stories for the Smedlines by tweeting us at IndieMacUser on Twitter. Also, check out all the latest Kevin Smith news at smedlines.com.
Thank you very much to Ben there for the Smedlines for this week. Please go to indiemacuser.co.uk for more fantastic content there. So yeah, I was going to talk to you about the Smedlines.
Wait a minute, did that feel good to say the Smedlines line, the lead-in? Because it felt good.
Well, it was kind of familiar for me because we've got a Whovian Roundup section to my Doctor Who podcast, which is actually presented by Lewis from Indie Mac User.
Oh,
Ben's,
awesome.
Fiance. So we've kind of got a mirror to your feature.
That's so awesome.
See,
that shows you how out of touch I am.
Oh, Lewis's birthday was yesterday, and I just saw a picture on Twitter. He looks so bad. He looks so he looks so hungover. He's like laying on his side on the pillow, and he looks
I
like.
saw the picture.
Did you see it too? He looks so pathetic.
I haven't seen the picture yet.
Oh my god!
What I love is he usually looks so kind of. There's no other way of saying it than big and gay and cheerful.
He really
and
does.
happy. He looks gritty in this picture.
That's exactly what I was thinking. He always looks so happy and ready to go and dapper. And there he just looks so rough. Like, oh God, he must have really gone downhill last night. It starts out as fun.
Well,
they know how.
I just want to say, while we're on adding that element, it was so weird. Once it was there, it was like, why did it take a year and a half or however long it was, a year and whatever, even if it was 8 months, why did it take 8 months or whatever to figure out A, that we needed that segment, and B, that to bring Ben in, because it was.
Yeah, I think that the little bits of the show have just kind of happened organically. They just kind of happen like little light bulbs go on. And
that's what I love about the show. Like, usually you say about, as a podcaster, I'm sure, Dr. Squee, you can agree, you kind of shun your first show. You're like, ooh, don't listen to that. And yeah, I definitely feel that way about this show, but at the same time, at least that first year, there's a definite progression that you will see. And I call it's the Roger and Me effect of the show. Which, if you've seen Roger and Me, it's Michael Moore sort of stalking this guy, who's the head of GM. Okay?
General Motors, isn't it?
Yeah. So there was kind of that element to the show in that I say stalking, but I hate that term because people say, oh, he's a fucking stalker. But, it was me wanting to get my hero on the show. So there's that element the whole time. And it's us kind of climbing that ladder.
I think there is something as well. When I listened back to the first episode of my podcast, and you might have felt the same, you also realise that there are some things which you put in the cement there of that first episode, which are just kind of a thread right the way through. I kind of had imagined that I'd put more stuff in as it went, but when I listened to the first episode, there's quite a lot which kind of gave birth to the rest of it. Was it the same for you?
When I go back and listen, what I do hear is a guy who is desperately trying to claim that space before someone else. I beat you all to the idea. So there's a sort of desperation to it, I hear. I think most of the things we sort of talked about as being elements of the show didn't really pan out except for a guest. It became guest-driven.
Right.
And originally, I remember doing things like the person was a co-host. The person who would have in, we didn't call them guests. And then I remember maybe 12 or 13 episodes in that made no sense. And then having to redo our feed to rechange the guest term. Just a lot of silliness. Also, I started a lot of things with this show to be the opposite of BCJ. So, I didn't want to name episodes, and I also, once we became guest shows, I didn't want to put the guest name in the title because I felt like every guest should be equal level, whether they were, someone from Twitter or whether they were someone from Mallrats.
Right.
But then you get in and then people are like, hey, I can't find the show that this person's on. It's a pain in the ass. So, yeah, you learn things along the way. So even though I was doing things to be the opposite of another show, I ended up reincorporating good ideas.
Well, it sounds like to me that to begin with you had to kind of put those rules in place to make it something different. But after a while, you just get your natural flow of the show.
Exactly.
And it kind of just becomes what it is.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I think that first show, like you said, you sounded desperate, or there was a desperate, feeling to, claim your spot or whatever. I think it was. I love that first show, because I think it's you kind of trying to plan it out, trying to kind of make some sense of what you want to do.
Yeah.
And I think it was you just laying it out there. Like, this is what I want to do. It may be different now, but I think it was you just trying to figure it out. And I think that's important. Just like we actually had a conversation the other day about people kind of going on Facebook about, topics or something that's bothering them. But, podcasting is just another way to get stuff out that you can do anytime, and no one can really stop you. So I think it was your way of just kind of, this is what I want to do, and this is how I think it's going to go, and either listen.
Show.
Yeah. So this.
I think it was I always say it's the fourth show with Susie Q where the show kind of found its voice.
Yeah, her show is
and
really good.
Like that's the first show where I was like,
right.
I get it. I get what I get what this is going to be about.
Right.
I felt like I did. It became more about giving back somehow. I don't even know how that was, but.
And it becomes more about the guest. It becomes more about like how this person can add to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was the other thing that I loved. I still love the show now, and I love Mark Bernardin, and I love that he's a part of it and what that show has become.
Fatman on Batman.
Yeah, because now Kevin's just enthusiastic about doing it, and it's a whole different energy. But the what I loved about the first year or so of shows was everyone was sort of a recipe for success. Everyone sort of showed you, like you had a comic book guy or some person tangentially connected to Batman in some way, but ultimately what they gave you each week was how they succeeded.
So inspiring.
Yeah,
there's so many.
It really was, and I was like, I remember saying to the kids, "You got to listen to this show, not because of the Batman content, although that's good too, but because each week these guys are telling you how they got in the industry or whatever."
Who's the guy that I love the most? Was it the Scottish guy?
Oh, he's out there.
What's his name?
Grant Morrison.
Grant Morrison. I love that show.
Amazing
what a great show.
So more and more that became the model of our show, was to try and kind of emulate as much of that as we could.
Right.
So
definitely.
And then we had Scott Schiaffo on, and that was sort of the big.
I was going to lead you into that next. Yeah. So like the first of the people from Kev's Direct World who came on the show.
Yeah, if you go back and listen to it, it's so interesting. It's in a diner, which is like, you could tell in retrospect, well, I'm not going to invite this guy to my place because he could be some whack job.
Well, this is the first time you met him.
Yeah. So we met at this diner, and he turned out to be really cool. And then it was great because, like, our experience went well enough that he kind of gave me the blessing. So the folks that he was friends with would feel more comfortable coming on the show.
Right. That he's not a crazy kook.
Yeah, and that was Brian O'Halloran, of course, and Marilyn, and all the, a lot of the Clerks alum, and Ernie, and all those folks. So, yeah, he's been such, along the way, we've developed a friendship. I mean, he's a buddy. I try and use his music. It was in this theme today.
It was. Bane was getting all grooving on.
Yes.
Scott Schiaffo.
So, yeah.
That was cute.
Scott, and in a world, no one, again, one of those things, I never anticipated any of that, and that's been crazy. And so Scott's doing music for the film, and
we'll get there.
Yeah. So, yeah, Scott was the first big guest, and he's is it the passepartout? Is that the term?
I don't know. What does that mean?
I don't know. It's I think French.
Ask your sex bot over there.
Oh yeah. Sex bot. I mean, what was it? Was it Scott Mosier who said any robot has the potential?
I don't know how you're
any
gonna
robot that you fuck is a sex robot.
I don't know how you're gonna get your penis in there, but there has to be a hole somewhere.
I mean, with a guy, you don't have to get it in. You could just rub it up against. I mean, let's face it. I'll shove it up my ass. Come on,
look at it.
You can fist that sucker.
Oh, gross. Please.
Okay, Scott, that came to you way too quick.
It really did.
Oh well, come on. Yeah.
And it's not even 9 o'clock in the morning here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm my comedy chops. I'll blame it on that.
Your comedy chops are way too good for the room.
Are way too gay this early.
They're way too gay.
So your comedy ass chops.
Yes.
His ass chops.
Yes. Oh God, that reminds me of cock tonsils. That's all I could say.
Ew, what is that? Cock tonsils?
You don't know?
What is that from?
That's the title of the latest education episode.
Oh my God.
Another brilliant show.
Oh.
So, moving on from your ass for a minute, if we may. So, with the kind of Squeeniverse stars which you've had on, or like from the larger Kevin Smith world, who was your favourite? Your favourite interview, not your favourite one. I won't make you pick a child like that, but who was your favourite interview?
When you put it that way, it's different. I mean, the obvious answer is Kevin Smith.
And we'll get to him. I said,
yeah, exactly. But
he said,
I don't know.
He said other than that.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll take that off the shelf, and there's been a lot of really cool ones. Like of late, I really liked our Christmas show or the Star Wars show, which was with one of the guys working with us on the other project. We'll get to later.
Michael Consolmagno.
Yes, I just liked the energy, and it was fun talking to him passionately about Star Wars. It was such a simple and easy show to do, and I just loved it. Another one I loved a lot was very early on was with Steve Stark, the animator. Was a good one. Because I love that animation. Of the stuff Kevin did early on, to me that was the most genius because it was so simple in its idea. Hey, take my podcasts and animate them, and there were so many levels of genius going on because you had the animator who got to create this vision from what they were doing. He brought it to life, and I don't know. I was just so impressed with it, and I had become such a fan that you hear me geek out on him, like totally. And then Ernie was another big one, obviously. Because
Ernie is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I mean, just the timing was great. Ernie, at that time, Kevin had just done the yearbook show, Blue Horizons. And so I got to play that to him, and it kind of moved him. And yeah, that was amazing. And again, another case where I would consider Ernie a friend now. He's a big supporter, and heck, he's a good guy. He's a good people.
And there was a lot of good timings with some of your interviews, like the guy who had done the prank which Tusk was based on. You had him on right at the cusp of all that.
I almost felt bad about that in retrospect because I scooped Kevin. You know what I mean? Like,
I've got to admit, I thought that at the time a little bit.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. But, I mean, when you got it, you got it. So you go. And, yeah. And the other thing that I felt bad about, this is all in retrospect, was just at that time we were on such a roll that there was a show with Kelly Carlin. That's amazing. That interview is amazing to me.
That's a great interview.
And I felt like it sort of got lost in the shuffle of all the action that was going on with Tusk and blah, blah, blah at the time.
Well, and the thing is, when you try to keep up with Kev and what's going on, it's very hard sometimes. He's got so much shit going on at one time.
That's another reason we're so happy Ben Gumry became part of the show, because now we kind of have someone to handle that aspect, to stay on top of that, because it does. That part gets crazy. Like, Kev's got so many fucking things going on. As people are trying to get his time, it is... The way the man's schedule changes, I mean, it's simple. We were supposed to have him. We were supposed to have him in January. Well, January's gone.
Right.
Because they're not shooting in
There was almost
Philly
a
anymore.
point. There was almost a point, like
Or
before,
at least not now.
Before Kev, before we did the interview with Kev, like the podcast interview. There was a point. I don't know how long this period was, but Scott was like almost positive that Kevin was going to come here.
Oh yeah,
he's coming here. He's coming here, and we're going to do the interview.
There was a moment where that was on the agenda.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a time there that it was like
because
so...
his people asked. We have a studio. Ashley asked, "You guys have a studio?"
Yeah, we have one in New Jersey.
I was going to say, like, was it a case of like Field of Dreams? If you build that cave, he will.
Yeah,
yeah, and
yes.
and we found out after the fact was that was a possibility, and the reason why is because he could come here and not have to worry about bullshit. You know what I mean? Not have to worry about
and just look at all the stuff. And,
he would have been. There would have been a whole another level of bullshit he wouldn't realize.
Yeah. Wow, he really does like me. He's got pictures of me all over the place.
Yeah.
Scott's just locking the basement door quickly.
Get me the walrus suit.
We just watched that last night. Wasn't that on last night?
We put it on like. Was it last night or the night before? I don't remember.
Last night.
I threw it on. It was time for viewing. But we watched the commentary.
I love it. Like, instead of a walrus suit, you've just got a big hockey jersey.
That's his walrus.
Made of flesh. All right, so this is how we met Kevin. So we're at this Montclair Film Festival. We have tickets. This is when he announced Yoga Hosers, as a matter of fact.
Yes.
How timely is that?
I know, right?
So the show happens. It's a big to-do. Kevin goes backstage, which is more of like a stairwell or like a little like foyer area.
Yeah.
That's roped off. Not roped off. It's actually doored off. They have double doors with square windows.
Right. Just like one little window up on the top, so I had to get on my tippy toes to look through.
And a security guard who's just standing there. So Kevin kind of gets ushered in there. So like most people do after a Kevin show, no one never seems to leave. Everyone sort of lingers. So we lingered our way over to that door,
hoping for a little bit of attention.
Mm-hmm. And so we were there, and there's a security guard is trying to push us off, but he's not being an outright douche.
Yeah, he was almost there, though.
Yeah, he was like, but I said to him, listen, I have a feeling if he sees me, if Kevin sees me, he'll know me, and he'll call me in. I'm not exactly sure where I got the idea. But I had got enough of a feeling that he was aware of the show for whatever reason.
Well, I think we had talked to him before that. Or something like Hammerstein or something, no?
No, Hammerstein's after.
Okay.
This is the first.
Yeah, so you were very sure that he would know.
For whatever reason. I got that vibe. And so he wasn't turning to look. And I wanted to kind of move the process along. So I pulled out my phone. I pulled up the ThatMan on Fatman picture, which is that original thumbs picture.
Yeah, with you, your dorky self.
Yeah, with Kevin's logo on my shirt. And so...
And held it right up to the window.
Yeah, so I put it right against the window. And so now I'm standing there.
Holding it
I'm like practically over the guy's shoulder with my hand on the window. And
if I may...
Now he's
going to really work well, or it's going to be getting security macing you any second.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how it felt. But for whatever reason, I just didn't stop. I said, just give me a second more. And Kevin is not looking over because his people are coming up and taking photos with him now. And, there's stuff going on in there. He's engaged. So finally, I just say, fuck it. With my other hand, with my index finger, I just start tapping the glass really sharply. And finally... He glances over, he looks, I see him look at the phone, look at my face, look at the phone, look at my face, and then his arms go up and he says, come on in.
Yeah. Now, Scott went in. So then, yeah.
But the security guard blocked you.
He blocked me.
I don't know why he would do that.
Because he was a dick.
So, so I assume she follows me in, and I walk in, and so I'm giving Kevin a hug, and then Kevin realizes what's going on because he can see, and he says, and who is this person you're with? And I said, oh, and that's my wife. And
She's
then
at
he
the other
waved
side of the
then
door.
He waved her in, yes. And then there was another guy with us
He
or
was so
something. I'm like,
sweet.
I don't know him really. Sorry.
He was so sweet.
I threw him under the bus.
Oh, yeah. Who was that guy? I have no idea.
I have no idea.
You just met him.
Yeah, we just met him online. he has no right back here whatsoever.
There's someone telling a very bitter version of this story in another podcast
Yes,
right now.
those guys. Well, actually, when we were leaving, like enough of the security had lapsed, I think, that guy got in anyway. But
Nice.
Yeah,
He was really nice, too.
Yeah. And I got something signed for him.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
Here's a pittance for you, douchebag. Oh, what a dick. Sorry, I'm looking at my... See, but it's like BB gun mania knows no bounds.
Yeah.
You know, that's where I chalk it up to. If you've ever
Well-
seen that movie,
What movie is that?
it's from A Christmas Story
Oh, that's right.
with the BB gun.
That's right. Yeah. But it's not, well,
Step on your brother's throat to
So-
meet Kevin.
so you started talking to him, and
Yes.
what finally happened?
And so, like, yeah, so now I had been on Comic Book Men in the second season, last episode.
Right. People would
And-
not recognize you now, though, if they saw
Yeah,
it.
I know.
Because you look so different.
You might recognize the voice.
Oh, yeah, the voice is the same.
And Gene had made a collage for Father's Day, a bunch of pictures, in a collage.
Right.
And at that point, I had everyone.
I'm looking at it right now.
I had everyone in the Comic Book Men had signed it, even Brian. And it's funny because I think only a week or two before we had met Brian at the Asbury Park Comic-Con, and he signed it, and he was like, "Have fun getting Kevin's. You're going to have to go to California for that."
Who said that?
Brian Johnson.
Yeah. Smart ass.
He said it spiritedly,
Yeah.
he was cool about it. It was a joke. It was jokingly said.
Right.
It was
He calls himself a puss, so I can call him that.
Yeah. Anyway, so so within 2 weeks, there I am, and Kevin is signing it. And during that, while he's signing it, I said, "So, will you be on my show?" And Kevin said, "A podcast based on me. How could I say no? Or how could I not be on it?" Is what he said. And I said, "That's not a yes." And so he said, "Of course, I'll be on your podcast." And then we got so excited.
And then we got excited and left. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we have no date.
No, well, we did talk about other stuff, but you know what? It was such a whirlwind, adrenaline-produced memory that I don't remember a lot of the finer
Yeah, it was
points.
adrenaline produced, right?
So I just remember, yes, we were there. We talked for a minute. I couldn't tell you what we talked about anymore. And then I asked him. I remember that.
And I remember sending a whole bunch of messages to the kids.
I remember leaving, and then we were like, "Fuck, what do we do now? How do we get in touch with him?" We didn't give contact info.
Right.
We're such dopes.
But then it was like 8 months later after that.
Yeah, so that's how we first met Kevin.
Amazing. And please go and catch the podcast on the back episode. It's fantastic to anyone listening. But, I mean, the thing I wanted to ask about is after you've had that great experience and you met Kevin, I think doing the next episode's perhaps the toughest. How did that feel, kind of being in a post having interviewed Kevin World on a Kevin Smith podcast, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that is kind of a weird thing. It was, you go through, I don't know what you call it, maybe postpartum depression. Is kind of the nearest. Yeah, and it's funny because I remember Chris Ladondo kind of jabbed at me a little bit. He's like, "Well, now what are you going to do? Your show's over, right?" I'm like, and at the time I was like, "Well, I think we've got a lot more." And the truth is, at that point, I think we had built enough of a show that, we had our format down. We knew what we were doing. But yeah, there was a bit of that, oh, fuck.
Well,
we've crossed, we've climbed the biggest mountain.
But I think, too, like, knowing that Kevin appreciates it and supports it and, likes the show, that kind of helped us want to do it more and more.
Yeah.
And then more people wanted to be involved because he was into it. It wasn't
obviously.
The Kevin show that's, that I don't want to go on because they're crazy sycophants.
Obviously, having Kevin on gave our show some sort of, for lack of legitimacy.
Right.
And I say that with air quotes.
Right.
If you
See,
saw
but
me.
I have to honestly tell you that I think the Ernie one did too. Ernie's interview is probably, and I know I'm going back a little bit, just being there, like in person and watching it, was one of the coolest things through this whole process that I've seen. Just because, like, you're talking to him, and he
it
looked
was
at you
surreal
like,
too, because we did it. You have to understand, we did it in a hairdresser salon. His wife has a salon, and that's where this interview was. So it was so surreal.
But the thing is, though, like
you guys were sitting in chairs, the old-fashioned dryer chairs with the dryers up.
Right. And I know I'm going backwards, because we talked about this already, but I think that, to me, that was like a turning point, because I think you were talking to Ernie about things that he was like, whoa, this guy
done his research.
knows stuff, and he was not expecting it. And
It's just because I was a fan. I feel connected.
That's what I mean. I think it matters.
And to me, Ernie, I said it on that show. I'm a fan of the fact that he's a friend of Kevin. He doesn't have to be a star in the movies. To me, he's a celebrity for the impact he's had on Kevin's life. I just think that is so cool in and of itself. And I guess he appreciated that. And because I wasn't, oh, you're in the movies, or I don't know, but for whatever reason, it was good energy in it all.
Right. Well, and then when you think about from Kevin, we've had Bob Hawke on. Did we have Bob Hawke first?
We had Bob. Actually, I think we did have Bob Hawke first. Yes.
Did we?
Yeah. Well, it was a weird snowball. It was like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So we had Bob Hawke on just a little
bit Malcolm.
But no, that was
that's. I was going to say with the. Sorry to jump in here, but I was going to ask about Bob and Malcolm and how they kind of led and have been involved with the podcast movie you have coming up.
So we had Bob Hawke on the first time before Kevin, but the one thing I remember about Bob, the reason that he agreed to be on was that it was specifically a show about Kevin. I don't know if any other podcast had reached out to him if he would just came on. The fact that our show was based on Kevin meant something to Bob, enough for him to say yes. And so when Bob came, we admittedly pulled out all the stops. We got reservations to a good restaurant, and so he came in on the train because he's in New York City, and there's a train station pretty local, and Bob is such a cool character. It is so hard to. If you've seen any video footage of him, or he is that guy, but he's just so genuinely nice.
He really is.
And warm and inclusive. And so from the get-go, he's another guy that, you find yourself telling him things in 20 minutes that you wouldn't have told your best friend, probably.
He likes to know, more about you than, really wanting to answer questions. He's very, he likes to... I think he likes...
There was a bit of that at first, obviously, because he wanted to make sure that we
I know, but he's very,
whack jobs.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it was so funny because he just he went with it. Now that I think back, he had no real reason to do it.
And he came to our house, he didn't know us.
Yeah. And so you hear in that first show, sort of our first interactions. And then after that, we went to dinner, but it was dinner that changed things, I think, because
really
that's where it went from it was just, he opened up and we opened up, and it was just a really cool experience. I always say, he tells stories, and then I look over the other table and I'd see grown men blushing. It's just he didn't hold back.
No, he didn't.
So, so that was the first time we had him on. And admittedly, I said to Gene, that was great. He's such a great guest. We got to book him fast. I want to book him again soon because he's not getting any younger. Now, you talk to him.
He's always out and about doing stuff.
Yeah, but you talk to him, he thinks he's going to live to 100. So who knows? So we booked him again. But just before having him on, we had been chasing Malcolm.
Oh, my God.
Malcolm Ingram.
Malcolm is really hard to get.
Documentary filmmaker and also podcaster and
Canadian.
Friend of Kevin. And so he has a kind of a... but he's a bear. Yeah, and he's also kind of loosey-goosey. Like,
Yeah.
so Gene had been after him for...
A while.
And then just one day out of the blue, he said, like, Gene did it. He said, Gene asked him, and he said he would do it in like in an hour or something.
Well, you know what? When you see that somebody's like engaging
on Facebook,
you kind of go. So I just went because I kind of saw like he had made a comment and it just popped right up. I'm like, ooh, he's like on now. So I sent a message and he said, okay, I can be ready in 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever.
I think it was an hour.
Or an hour, whatever it was.
Yeah, because you were like, I'm coming home.
I was on my way
ready
home.
In an hour.
To anybody who's listening, don't do this while you're driving. But I was basically scheduling this while I was driving on my way home. And we got ready and sat down and talked to Malcolm.
Yeah, and we talked to him for a good long while.
Oh, my God.
A lot of it, I just remember having to edit a lot.
I know, but the Kevin love was just like oozing.
And there was a moment where... And I ended up losing the cut. I thought I had it at one point, and I probably did, but I apparently trashed all the stuff I cut out, which is probably for the best. But of that stuff, while he was talking about his documentary and how it came together, you know, I was like building the pieces in my mind. I'm like, oh, wow. I in my head, I'm saying, wow, I could do this. I could do this. And at one point, I blurt out, if I did a documentary, I think I could do a documentary on podcasting. And then we just kind of moved on, but that thought never got out of my head. And I think it was a couple weeks later we had Bob Hawke on again. And then when we went out to dinner, I sort of spilled the guts on that, saying, I got this idea, ba-boom. And Bob Hawke was on board. Like, that was so weird.
No.
Because he just jumped in as an enthusiast.
Yeah, he did. But that's him, though.
Yeah, and we also had been talking about another project,
right?
Too, which had piqued his interest as well. But and that we talked about that over the first dinner, but it was much more nebulous. But then having this, like, it just everything lit up,
right?
And
he agreed that it was a good way to go.
Yeah. And so next thing you know. The drama of making a documentary started.
We wrote the treatment plan.
And essentially, since then, our show has become a supplement to this movie. But
I know.
A fun one.
Well, I mean, if you might just like to drop a few names for us of the people you've got involved in this podcast movie, because it's gone stellar.
Yeah, it's so, I guess momentum breeds momentum. But yeah, obviously, very early on, we were able to get Kevin's buy-in.
Kelly Carlin, Ralph Garman.
Ralph Garman came a little later, but yeah.
Well, we don't have to do it in order of...
Well, I'm trying to think of...
Okay, go ahead.
I'm trying to rung them. But yeah, so... Yeah, who else? Jim Gaffigan. If you just want to throw out
Anthony Cumia.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, I mean... I think that I even hinted at this several weeks back. I said, we have someone I think coming who is even bigger than Kevin Smith. And everybody was like, who can
Is he bigger than Kevin?
If you look at Twitter followers, he has twice the Twitter followers.
Okay, now this is my question.
2 million to 4 million.
Because you might have to cut this or not. Are we going to make the announcement now?
Well, I mean, it's already sort of out there, isn't it?
No, the other one.
Oh, yeah, I guess we could. I mean, yeah, we could.
Yeah, come on, give me an exclusive.
We have a special announcement right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, this will be the first. As we'll be saying it on the show, but there'll be a press release.
There'll be an This is the
probably
first,
that'll drop on Monday.
This is our first international.
But yeah, so
that we've announced.
So yeah, we can. This won't be an announcement so much as we can say that Scott Thompson from The Kids in the Hall has joined the roster of podcasters.
Amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
oh my God!
I get to fly up to Toronto, eh?
Buddy Cole is in the house.
Yeah. So I get to make contact with Canada.
Yes, The
movie.
And just for me personally, I've got to say, like, of all those names, like, each and every one of them is a name which I'd be fascinated to talk to. But when you said Neil deGrasse Tyson, for me, he is just such a genius. The guy is just, not only is he that clever, but he's clever enough to be able to explain it to someone who isn't that clever like myself. You know?
He really
He
is.
does it in such a relatable way, and he includes everyone on the journey. So I think that's an amazing get for you guys.
Well,
Yeah,
can I just say? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And the thing that made that so okay, as soon as it was confirmed, and it's been sort of in the works for months, like we've been sort of, we've been working that for months. Gene has. And so when it finally happened, because like here's a star that my kids knew and were impressed by. This was the first. That's how I know. Oh wow, we got somebody big, because my kids are impressed. Because my kids haven't been impressed with any of this stuff because they're my kids. So yeah, that was the first sign. And then I said, so this is the first opportunity I have to figure out a way to kind of pay back Kevin and Andy for what they did through, education. So I'm like, I know what I can do. I can turn Neil deGrasse Tyson on to the podcast Edumacation, which is a science-boosting podcast. Yes, it's a lot of silliness and a lot of craziness, but at its heart, it's learning and trying to expand your mind. And so I said, I'm gonna communicate to Neil deGrasse. That's my mission. I'm gonna crack the universe. I'm gonna pay Kevin back, plant the seed of edumacation that he should go on that show. So that was part of my mission. But then to go there and find out that he remembers a joke from the Tonight Show that Andy wrote was like, wow,
awesome.
This is so cool. Yeah, I mean, it's like full circle. Now, as another thing, I get to share this with Andy. Are you aware that there's a podcast called Edumacation? I was inspired to do all this by Kevin Smith, the writer and director.
Kevin Smith.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Smith. My main show is based on him. I mean, it's sort of about him. It's a fanboy show about Kevin. And it's been big for me. I mean, it's given me so much. The only way I could ever possibly pay him back would be to tip you off as to the existence of his show called Edumacation, which he hosts with a gentleman who used to write for Jay Leno, The Tonight Show. And if you ever saw a science joke during it was probably written by him, because that was his thing. That's his thing. So the premise of the show is Andy, the smartest guy Kevin knows, tries to educate him each week. And through the process, far more laughs are involved. But
Okay, you started with edumacation. I was actually disappointed with how few science jokes ever made it into Jay Leno's monologue. I would watch his monologue essentially every night. And one of the funnier of the science jokes that I remember, he gave the night after I appeared on his show. And he said, we had astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson last night, and one of the things we learned, by the way, this was also the day after the presidential inauguration of Barack Obama, when Aretha Franklin sang. Oh, wow. And she had this huge hat, all right? And the joke was, we had astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson on last night, and he told us there are only two things you can see from space, the Great Wall of China and Aretha Franklin's hat. It's just really funny.
And yeah, that was very cool, and we got to do that. And I don't know, and Andy, in fact, I did confirm with him. I was able to shoot him a message saying, was this your joke? And he said, yeah. And then I sent him the audio, and
that's so great, though. It's really trippy. I always find when you get to tie these worlds together. So we're about to sort of roll this one in for a landing in a minute. But
yes.
First of all, or almost finally of all, the other feature which you have every week, of course, on the show is TESD Groupie Pick of the Week. So here's over to that now.
Indeed. ThatMan on Fatman presents At TESD Groupies. Tell 'em Steve Dave. Pick of the Week.
Hi, and welcome to the TSD Pick of the Week. With all the Walt, Brian, and even Sunday Jeff talk and love we've had in this segment, how can we not show some Q love? I think it is about time. After all, this is the year of Q. So this segment is gonna jump off that bandwagon right now. I always find it interesting how Q is such a big part of the show now, when he was not even heard in the first episodes. But it's been great seeing his growth, and how his appearance was so natural, and has worked so great in the podcast dynamic. So we may not be talking about one of his most remembered stories, but who doesn't enjoy him on TSD? So let's do it with this week's pick. TSD 173. Would you like a corn muffin? This episode is introduced by Q, as Bry is not in the store. But there is a plan. The first part of the show will be Q and Walt, and the second part will be Walt and Bry to finish the show. In the first part, Walt talks about how a medical scare can put things in perspective. There is talk about Walt not being at the Comic Book Man premiere, when he told Q he would be there. The idea of Q getting him clothes is discussed, and Walt wonders how many of the first hardcore group listeners are still around. I, for one, I'm still here. The guys talk about Mike doing a sex spot, and Q talks about making up sex terms before handing the episode over to Brian Walt. But guess what? Brian doesn't appear, and we have to go on with Walt and Q, who brings up Baron von Flanagan. Among the topics discussed, the cost of a dead body and how the real Pinocchio story goes. And the guys wonder what would happen if the Pinocchio rules applied in real lives. And so Min appears to be part of the conversation. Enjoy all the topics and be sure to get your Q fix this week. So, I hope you re-listen to it, I hope you enjoy it, and you're all the way.
And thank you very much to TESD Groupie for her pick of the week this week and every week. If you just like to quickly, Scott, just say something about that feature and how cool it is to have that in there.
It really is, because she was the first sort of listener to come in organically. I mean, from early on, she was out of Twitter. Anyone who's been on Twitter knows she was the queen of the Friend Friday or the Follow Friday. And
yeah,
and you get a sense when you're on Twitter, you get a sense for people. And when people don't have pictures of themselves, they usually are shy. You just get that idea. And so that's sort of how I approach her. I'm like, I could tell that you're probably shy, but I see you do these Friend Fridays every week, and I want to thank you for, including me, blah, blah, blah. And then that's when I found out that she was from Barcelona, Spain. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're from Barcelona, Spain, and you're into Tell 'em Steve Dave podcast and all this craziness? Like, what the fuck? So, but she was great. And so first we got a relationship on Twitter, and then, of course, I was so fascinated by that. And plus, hey, accents on a podcast are always wonderful. So, breaks up things and, challenges the ear. So I was like, you got to come on the show. And so we had her on the show. And again, almost immediately when she was done, I'm like, we could do a feature around her. Like, she could pull a pic of Tesdy and pick her favorite. And I didn't really have to tell her much, too. That's just like Ben later on would do. I just said, I gave her the general idea of what we were looking for, and boom. The first audio she produced was exactly what we were looking for. We just threw a theme on it, and boom, and it's just become a part of the show.
Well, that's fantastic. And we unfortunately, we're starting to run out of time here, my end of things, because as you said earlier, it's Valentine's Day, and I've got a movie date with my wife. So before we wrap things up, though, first of all, we didn't get time to jump on the NYC Podfest, which was a fantastic moment in the show. So maybe that's for next time. But if you could just say what you're planning for the next year of ThatMan and where you want to take the show in the future.
Well, that's a darn good question. I want to finish this movie. So the show isn't necessarily such an adjunct. But once that's done, I think we're looking for more ways to bring the audience in more. problem is with the movie, I think the show has suffered. I mean, I don't say that as it sounds negative. We're aware that the show has been, it's not top priority. The movie really is very much all-consuming. So I'm looking forward to getting back to just having the show and also building more audience participation and putting video back in. That was kind of a pain in the ass. I think we accomplished the goal in that we started introducing it, but we're not there fully, and I want to tweak that out more.
Fantastic. Well, again, just thank you very much for having me on to host this special edition of That Man, and thank you very much for 2 years of fantastic shows to both of you. And if anyone hasn't told you two recently, I'd just like to say you're very smart and you're very good.
Oh, thank you so much,
Thank
man.
you.
Dude, and thank you so much for doing this. We
Thank you
stole this
so
idea
much.
from you, totally, so we knew that you had to host it. And you've become such a great podcaster that, like, I didn't have any doubts that you'd be able to take the reins.
Well, thank you, sir, but we're here to shine your apples, not mine.
Nah.
So,
All
for this
apples need to
edition
be
of
polished.
That Man on Fatman, I have been Dr. Squee. With me, somewhere or other, has been my co-host. If anyone's wondering who the hell Doggy Who is, that's my dog. It's a joke. Don't worry about it. And joining me via the magic of Skype have been my guests, your hosts from this show. And they have been?
Scott Holden.
And Gene Holden.
And we thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. I'll let you round it up.
We thank you so much, man. Like, again, and please check out his podcast. If you are a Whovian, please tell them where they can find your show.
Oh, Galifrey Stands podcast.podbean.com. But if you just type in Galifrey Stands podcast into Google, I found you can just bring everything up there. So we're everywhere.
Isn't that a wonderful thing?
But again, listen to more That Man. It's awesome.
And listen to Galifrey Stands if you're a Whovian. You should do a Sherlock show, too. You really should.
Oh, my God.
Then I could be on.
Sorry, go on.
Then I could be on your show. Then I could be a guest.
Well, we could do a Sherlock special sometimes. There's the Moffat connection there, the same showrunner, at least at the moment.
Yes.
Because I'm all in on Sherlock. I love that show.
Yeah.
And on that note of me and Scott practically blowing each other and each other's podcasts,
I think I sense a new show. Maybe there's a new show
Sorry?
in the works here. Maybe there's a new partnership show in the works here.
Ooh.
Where we blow each other.
No. Well, I mean, that might be interesting, too. I'm sure we get a lot of listeners, but I'm thinking maybe Sherlock show.
The International Blowjob Show.
That has to be on
Sherlock.
you. Yeah, but that
Yes.
like has to be, that can't just be a podcast. That has to be a like a YouTube thing.
I don't know. We'll see. I think we might have something here. You folks may have seen an exclusive in the works.
Sure, well, just drop me a line, sir. But again, let's take this one in for a landing.
All right.
From all of us, from 2 years of That Man on Fat Man, I've been Dr. Squee, and with me has been Scott and Gene, and everyone, please, have a week.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. And have a good movie, man.
Have fun.
Happy Valentine's
guys.
Day.
Take care.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Happy Valentine's Day, guys.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Thanks
Bye.
so much.
Go get him, that man.